So here we have the stomach. The stomach is a little bit different from most of the other parts of the gastrointestinal tract. Namely, this is because it has 3 layers of muscle tissue here rather than the typical 2. Now, that third layer, this oblique layer of muscle tissue, lets the stomach kind of push in different directions. It's no longer worried about just moving things through the tube. Instead, we can actually kind of jostle things in the tube around a little bit. Okay. Now, what do we need the stomach to do? So the stomach is going to hold some of the partially broken down, so partially mechanically digested food in a bag, and it's going to surround it with a bunch of acid. That acid is going to help us break down some of the parts and pieces of the food to help us further mechanically digest the food. The acid is also going to help us turn on some digestive enzymes so that we can start to break down things like proteins and start the process of breaking those down. Remember that proteins are massive. And because the proteins are so big, we need a lot of time to break them into parts and pieces. So the acid is going to help us take this fully folded protein and then unfold it. So by unfolding it, we now get access to the ends and we get access to some parts in the middle so that we can then start cutting some bonds and break it down from this massive untenable thing into smaller bite-sized pieces that then we can actually completely chemically digest into their amino acid components. So it has to be pretty large to do this. This also means that we need food to stay in the stomach for a little while sometimes. And because we need food to stay in the stomach for a little while, it needs to be able to expand to be able to help us hold that food. Now, because we need it to expand, we have this awesome set of folded tissues here in our stomach called gastric folds. Okay. These gastric folds are basically going to give us lots and lots of surface area in the stomach and lots of kind of folds in the stomach that we can use to then press out and kind of stretch it out like an accordion whenever we fill it up with food so that we can then start to break down some of the stuff inside it. Now, our esophagus comes in up here. We're going to enter the mostly superior surface of the stomach up here, but we still have this little bulge above it called the fundus. Okay. It's going to enter here what we call the cardia. So this is our esophageal sphincter up here. This is going to be the sphincter that's going to keep acid in the stomach. Okay. Or keep the contents of the stomach from getting up into the esophagus. Now, as the food is in here, like I said, it's going to be surrounded by acid. We're going to be able to kind of stretch and give and stretch and push on the stomach so that we can kind of expand it if we need to. But these layers of muscle are also going to allow that stomach to push and squeeze on the food that is actually inside the stomach. By doing that, you can really start to further mechanically digest some of the food that's in there. Pushing and squeezing, grinding them against one another, all in the presence of this acid means we can take food, it being from, like, say, our Snickers bar analogy, going from recognizable pieces of chocolate and peanut and stuff like that to where now the pieces are so small and they're so mixed in with one another, we can no longer recognize what's peanut, what's chocolate, what's nougat, what's caramel. It's just all this single continuous substance. Okay. We're going to call it chyme now because it's now mixed in with our acid. But moving and squeezing and pushing and pulling, that is actually what the 3-layer musculature of the stomach is going to allow us to do versus the 2 that we have in the other parts of the gastrointestinal tract. Now, after the food is finished we finished this part of the digestion right here. Notice that I did not say we're absorbing our food yet. Notice that I did not say that we are completing digestion. Instead, we're just finishing this portion of it. We're still not breaking down everything. Okay. And we are ready to move forward. We can actually push the food through the pyloric sphincter, which is the distal end, or I guess the inferior opening in the stomach, at which point we can then move it into the duodenum, which is this first stretch of the small intestine. Now, if we look at the lining of the stomach, we have a pretty cool area. Okay. Not only do we have these gastric folds, the gastric folds are lined with these specialized simple columnar epithelial cells, where we have lots of mucosa here. Okay. Now, once we enter our gastric pits, we're also going to be entering some of our gastric enzyme producing cells as well as cells that are going to be actively producing mucus. Because remember, this is really, really acidic up here. We need lots of mucus to help us protect the cells. So to help us do that, we've got these big invaginations, these big gastric pits where we're going to house and control and protect all of these cells that are producing these substances, whether it's acids, whether it's digestive enzymes, that we're able to produce all those things down here deep to the gastric pits and a little bit closer to the outside of the organ than simply the lumen of the stomach. So all of this then is our mucosa, including a layer of muscle, as we would expect. And then we get into the submucosal layer. This is where you have your arteries, vessels, nerves, all those kinds of things, lymph vessels, and our, well, I said nerves already. And then we get down into the muscularis. So this is where we have our 3 layers. So to tell these apart, we can see that we're looking at these longitudinally. We are looking at these end on. So this tells us it's the circular layer. And this one, we get a little bit of both or kind of an in-between look. So that means this is going to be our oblique layer. So the oblique layer is going to be the most deep layer of the muscles here. The most superficial being the longitudinal layer. And then finally, we get to the serosa, which is the outer wall. Now, you can actually feel these muscles contracting because these muscles will start to contract around the same time every day if you tend to eat around the same time every day. But if you have food in there, you don't really feel them contracting because there's stuff for them to push against and they're just kind of happy doing their thing, helping you digest your food. However, if you haven't eaten at a time when you normally would have, all of a sudden, you'll actually feel these squeezes and pushes and pulls, and they'll start pushing air out your esophagus. When that happens, you're going to experience that as your stomach growling. Now, here we have an actual micrograph of some of these tissues. So here we have the lumen of the stomach up here. We can see these big invaginations. So here we have our gastric pits. And you'll see that some of the gastric glands we actually have found all the way down here inside the mucosa. So they are a long way away from the lumen of the stomach. So that means these things are nice and protected. We can identify them by looking for the cuboidal cells down here inside the mucosa.